gorgeous. Welcome to the 5th season of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kayla Smith, a holistic and integrative doctor specializing in fertility and hormone health. If you're looking for insights into hormones, fertility, and all things related, you've come to the right place. Tune in weekly as we record amazing experts in the field of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get and stay pregnant if that's your goal, as well as eliminate all your hormone-related symptoms for good. Are you ready? This season, we're focusing closely on fertility and hormone health with an amazing lineup of expert guests sharing groundbreaking knowledge, bringing you stories and advice that will support you in your journey. We're here to lift your spirits, give you a virtual hug, inspiration, empower you, and we want you to take charge of your fertility and your health. Thank you all so much for tuning in and being amazing listeners. So now, let's get started on your road to transformation. Let's start putting those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together one step at a time. On today's show, we have Alex F. He's been married to his high school sweetheart, Lauren, for 12 years and together for 19. When they began trying to conceive, they experienced male factor infertility, specifically azoospermia, which is zero sperm. And it was devastating and shocking diagnosis, and it took them years to overcome it. After lots of doctor's appointments, grieving, and therapy, they decided to move forward and use donor sperm. They now have an almost 4-year-old daughter named Delaney, who is the light of their lives. Alex has an Instagram profile called Pursuing Fatherhood, where he shares their story, and he is doing this to try to support others going through similar things. The goal is to raise awareness for these issues and let others know that they're not alone. Today, we're going to talk to Alex about navigating male factor infertility and embracing donor conception. Now, let's welcome Alex to the podcast. Hey, Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you today. You know, we have a lot of questions around male factor and egg donation and all the things. So I'm excited to get into this topic. I think it'll be really valuable.
Yeah, it is really important and one that's not often talked about.
For sure. So let's dive into that. Would you mind sharing your story and kind of how you got into the work you do and your experience around male factor infertility?
Yeah, I mean, I can back up quite a bit to just when my wife and I met in high school, really, and kind of became high school sweethearts, dated through the last few years of high school and all through college, and got married pretty young. And so we weren't really in a rush to try to start having a baby or anything. And so we kind of just leaned into that and enjoyed the first few years of marriage. And about 5 years in, everybody else was starting to kind of get married, start their families, do those kinds of things. And so we decided it was time for us too. And, we were both pretty young still at the time, mid-late 20s, and healthy, and just really, like most people probably assumed that it would just happen pretty quick. And it didn't. So, I was more in the camp of this is normal. It's okay. We're just being impatient. When I say we, I probably mean my wife. I thought she was being impatient. And I think as time went on, I just watched it get harder and harder on her in particular. And we got to about a year of trying. And that's when, even though I did still feel like we were kind of blowing things out of proportion, I did understand, I could see the toll it was taking on her. And so when she was ready to start getting things checked out and get tested, I fully supported that. And so she went first. I think we, like most people, kind of just always had this weird assumption that if something were going to be wrong, it was going to be with her body and not with mine. And so she went first. She had lots of conversations with her doctor about it, and got some, pretty basic tests and checks done, some blood work and things like that. And nothing came back that was an obvious reason why she would have trouble conceiving. So her doctor, actually, her OB/GYN is the one that suggested that I get checked next as kind of the next easiest, thing to check. And then kind of circle back to, we're blowing this out of proportion. This is ridiculous. All of a sudden I was like, not as on board with it, but like I said, I agreed. I knew that I kind of just wanted to cross it off the list of things for her to stop worrying about, basically. And so I went in, I got checked, and we got a call that my first sample had 0 sperm. And yeah, it's kind of what we said. Just really floored, honestly. And so that kind of started this crazy whirlwind of, the next few years of lots more tests. And I did a repeat sample, and that also came back 0. And so again, just young, healthy, no problems otherwise. And I just really, I don't know why. I guess I just thought, wouldn't I have known somehow? And it was the strangest experience of my life, really. Probably the most shocking, thing that's ever happened to us. And so, yeah, like I said, kind of kickstarted this whole crazy experience of male factor infertility, and eventually settling on using donor sperm and deciding to grow our family in that way. And so now we have a little girl who just turned 4 a few weeks ago. And so, yeah, very, very grateful to have ended up where we are now.
Oh, I love that. And I love that your story had a happy ending. And, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because again, I don't feel like it's talked about enough. And male factor, it's on the rise. I mean, 40% of the population, I think, is the latest statistic that I heard that said that couples will struggle with male factor 40% of the time. So interesting that we're talking about this. And so just talk to me a little bit more about that. How common in your experience is male factor?
Yeah, it is a lot more common than we know. And I think the reason why, like I said earlier, we had this assumption in our house, and I think it's probably goes well beyond that it's mostly a women's issue. And I think it's because women are the only ones talking about it. And a lot of times men are really, and I can personally, I felt and still do truly, I mean, 7-8 years later, it's a very difficult topic. It's very, it feels very emasculating or embarrassing or shameful. Even though it's, just like any other medical condition, there's nothing that, I could have done differently, or it doesn't really reflect on me or who I am. But we kind of bottle that up. And so we don't really know how common it is then. And I've really seen that a lot since I started struggling with it, and since I started talking more about it, people that have kind of come out of the woodwork, people that we knew in our personal lives that had dealt with it, and we just never knew. And like you said, I mean, now infertility, they say affects anywhere 1 in 6 couples or so. And, at least 40% of those are most likely have some sort of male factor contribution to the struggles there. And so it is very common. It's just not spoken about.
For sure. And was there ever talk about any of the causes? Like in your situation, did they say what might have caused this, or they just really don't know?
Yeah, I did have lots of checks on that and lots of blood work and things to try to pinpoint, is there some genetic reason? And in my case, I had 2 different issues. One is that I had a varicocele, which is very, very common, just kind of an excess of blood flow that can sometimes cause temperature to rise too high to be a suitable environment for sperm production or the sperm to be able to survive. And so I did have a surgery to repair that, in the hopes that lowering temperature and kind of clearing up that blood flow situation would help. And then had to kind of wait and retest 6 months later to no avail. Still same result, 0 sperm. The other issue that I had was as a little kid, maybe when I was about 3 or 4, I had a testicular torsion that I can remember 30 years ago was incredibly painful. Had to kind of rush into a surgery, and I've talked to my mom about it quite a bit since then, since getting my diagnosis. And what she recalls from it is that my parents were concerned about, infertility issues stemming from that. But we're always told, I think we caught it in time. There shouldn't be any issues as he gets older or whatever. And again, I didn't know to be kind of thinking about that or to be worried about that at all. But once I did start getting checked out as an adult after my diagnosis, my urologist did think that was quite possibly one of the factors as to what could have been the issue with me.
Gotcha. And that's also more common than we think. And I think it's because not a lot of people talk about it. And you just would never, the medical Western side will say, well, it really doesn't affect fertility. But I've seen that a lot in my practice that it can and it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And so talk to us a little more about any testing. How should we talk to our doctors, and are there certain tests that we should be asking for, the males in our lives should be asking for when it comes to, if you're struggling with infertility, something to kind of check off those lists?
I mean, I think now, looking back, even more than my wife getting checked out, a semen analysis is probably the quickest and easiest thing to kind of check off. I think any couples that are struggling with infertility at all should just jump straight to getting that checked off, even if there's nothing, to be found there. At least and you can kind of move on. And maybe, like in our case, it can really highlight the glaring problem. So I'm a big advocate of just getting that initial analysis done. And then beyond that, your doctor, urologist, or RE will be, the right person to work with, obviously. But for me, that looked like some pretty in-depth blood work, looking for certain markers that might indicate a genetic issue that could cause lack of sperm production, or, now they can even you get deeper into the infertility side of things, that, now they can do all kinds of things like sperm mapping, where they're really kind of looking in depth to see if they can find any signs of sperm production going on, and even further down into then actual, surgeries and procedures to try to extract sperm if there's any found, and those kinds of things. But, you can't get any of those places without getting that initial semen analysis done. And again, that's probably the quickest and easiest way to get checked.
For sure. And I always tell my listeners, my patients, let's do that in the beginning, just like you say, because if there is something found, a lot of times it's a lot easier to correct than it is when we find something with the women patients. So I'm glad that you said that, and I completely agree, for sure. And so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the decision-making process. You guys did end up going with donor sperm for medical reasons, but talk to me about that decision. How was that made? And is there anything that you can share with our audience that might help them if they need to make a hard decision like this one?
Yeah, it was hard. And we took a lot of time to really kind of grieve and process all of our options. I think at first it really was just grief. We didn't expect there to be a problem at all. And so then to be told essentially that we had really zero chance probably of ever naturally conceiving. And then, even through intense medical intervention, really, not great odds of conceiving using my DNA at all. I never was given great hope through my doctors of finding sperm through a sperm extraction or, microtesty procedure. And so we really had to grieve that, the loss of that baby that we could not have, that we thought was going to be, half you, half me, the dream that a lot of couples have. We did for a long time. And so the first probably year after my diagnosis was really just grieving. And then I think we were able to kind of pick ourselves up a little bit and start actually considering other options out there. We got kind of a really cool front row seat to traditional adoption while we were going through that. Right around the time that we started dealing with my diagnosis, my sister adopted 2 kids with with her spouse. And so we got to kind of see that, and all the pros and cons that come with all of those things and how special that was for our family. And we just knew that carrying a baby and experiencing pregnancy and birth and the newborn stage and on all of those things was just something that we both really wanted to experience. I think I wanted that experience just as much as my wife did. And so we really kind of then started transitioning to, okay, what are our options then? We could consider a sperm extraction procedure that would then lead to, hopefully IVF, and, maybe a successful pregnancy there. Or we could consider, sperm donation or possibly even embryo adoption. And so, those were the things that we really focused on for the next, year or so, probably. We are not quick or good decision makers. I always say that we have analysis paralysis. We just kind of we get frozen by, these are big decisions, And so for us, it really just came down to what the right decision for our family was going to be. We did lots of counseling. We talked with each other a lot. Not easy conversations, by any stretch. And thankfully, we were always kind of on the same page. But eventually, we just decided that this was going to be the right path forward for us. And part of that was being able to hold on to my wife's genetics too. And, I think I probably felt more strongly about that than my wife even did. But I think I just was worried more than anything about our potential children and how, they might feel connected to our family and those kinds of things. You overthink and over worry about every single thing when you're trying to make a decision like that. And so anyway, it was not a quick process by any means. We took lots and lots of time to think through it all. But eventually just that's where we both landed. We both felt the most comfortable with donor sperm as our path forward.
Gotcha. And I think that's a really good point to make too, that your path to parenthood might look different than you originally think, but the end goal is a baby. And so how do you get there? You need to think about those hard decisions and kind of do what's best for your family, just like what you did. So I love that you said that. Amazing. And so can you talk to us a little more about how do we start the process of even finding a donor sperm? Where is there some resources that you can recommend around that?
We really didn't know. And so we just leaned on our doctors at the time. And we did switch fertility clinics kind of in the middle of that because we found a couple of people in our lives locally that had experienced the same thing, and just felt like we would have a little bit more control over our experience or familiarity maybe with our experience if we kind of took the same path as these other people that we knew who had found success through this. And so we kind of just went with some of their recommendations and the doctor's recommendations. We did start with considering family members, and I don't have a brother. My dad passed away when I was a teenager, and those are two of the most common options for donors that I hear. And so we did consider some other family members. I do have a male first cousin, but he was very young at the time, and he offered. And I was really we considered it, and I just got really worried that long term he didn't really understand what he was offering, and what the lifelong commitment or relationship was, or I worried what if he gets married down the line and then they struggle to conceive, and then what does that do to our relationship? Or there were so many factors that we had to weigh, and just so many unknowns. And so and actually then when we went back to our clinic to discuss it, they told us that they would not allow us to proceed through their clinic using a known donor. And I've since learned that that's a pretty common thing. And so then we kind of were like, okay, now what? And the clinic recommended a few different sperm banks that they have worked with well in the past. And so we started there. Like I said, my wife and I both have trouble with analyzing all of our options. And so I just said, I need to feel like we have seen every option out there. So every bank that they recommended, I think there were 5 of them, we signed up and joined, did paid memberships with them so that we could view their full catalogs, because I just needed to feel like I knew what all of our options were. And I'm glad on one hand that I did that, because it did, I think at the time, give me a little bit of peace of mind, but it also was incredibly overwhelming. And even it's really hard. I've said this before, but it felt like I had a million options and 0 at the same time, because we didn't find me, and I think we were both kind of searching for that, truthfully, early on, and it just doesn't exist. You're not going to find your clone out there. And so we really struggled with the donor selection process, and that was probably, aside from the original diagnosis, probably the hardest part of this whole thing, because I really struggled with it in particular. It just was very, very hard on me, and I hated the whole process. And again, I mean, talk about a big decision. Like you're trying to find a stranger from the internet to provide half of the DNA for a child that you hope to raise, Mm-hmm. And that was so overwhelming for me at the time. And so we did our best. We whittled things down, and tried to prioritize what was most important to us in health and, hobbies or, looks or family history or whatever. Just all of the things. I made a big master spreadsheet where we could compare all these people, and we did the best that we could with the information that we had, but it was not an easy decision at all.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. So let's switch gears again and talk about some misconceptions. Are there any misconceptions that you want to dispel around, sperm donation or anything, male factor, anything around that process?
Yeah, I think we've touched on most of them. I think the biggest one is that it's not common, and we know that it is. And then the second is that, there's something inherently, wrong with you, or that you are. I hear all the time from people, I feel, like I'm less of a man, or things like that. I can't provide the thing for my wife that she desires the most in this world, or I hear that so often, and I struggle with kind of getting that point across, because I have experienced those same feelings, but just trying to be able to say, like, just like with any other medical diagnosis, this is not anybody's fault. This is just something that sucks that happened to you. And then moving on to like sperm donation, for example, I think a lot of people worry that the number one worry that I hear people talk about is like, I'm not going to be able to bond with my kid because we don't have that genetic link, or I'm somehow going to feel like less of a father, or those kinds of things. And that just could not be further from my experience. And I know a lot of that probably is thanks to the fact that we did, I feel like, process pretty well ahead of time, and go through therapy and have lots of good conversations together. And then just kind of the level of involvement that I tried to have throughout the selection process and pregnancy and the newborn stages and all of those things, I feel like I almost overcompensated for where I feel like I lack that genetic link. And, it's kind of funny now. My wife probably wouldn't say it's very funny, but our daughter is a gigantic daddy's girl, and really just clings on to me all the time. And it just, I think back, all those years and how much we struggled with making this decision, and fearing that lack of connection was going to be just this looming thing in our lives. And I know there's probably difficult days and conversations ahead as our daughter grows up, but right now, again, that fear just could not be less true.
I love that. And I think too, that goes back to the nature versus nurture. You have a baby, however you have that baby, and now this is your human to raise. And then that bond gets formed in those moments. And so I think that's a fear for a lot of people, whether it's donation, whether it's adoption. But I think once you're raising that child, that's your child. So I love that you say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors. We're going to come back. We're going to talk more practical tips. And so we'll do that and more when we come back.
Hey y'all, it's Dr. Kayla here. I hope you are loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back shortly, but first, let's hear a word from our amazing sponsor. Trust me, it's something you'll definitely want to hear, especially if you're passionate about fertility and hormone health. Did you know we have our exclusive herbal tea crafted especially for fertility, hormones, and reproductive health? This isn't just any tea. It's a nurturing blend of 5 potent herbs, each chosen for their unique ability to support fertility and hormone balance. Imagine the benefits of red raspberry, nettles, calming chamomile, antioxidant-rich green tea, white peony, and the delightful rooibos vanilla, all in one soothing cup. This delicious, nutritious tea is perfect for starting your morning or relaxing in the evening. So why wait? Head on over to our website, www.hormonepuzzlesociety.com/fertility-tea to support your fertility journey in the most natural and enjoyable way. Now let's get back to our insightful episode and continue our hormone puzzle journey together.
Hey, Alex, welcome back.
Hey, thank you.
So let's talk maybe some practical tips. What are maybe your top 5 things that you would tell somebody who's thinking about doing sperm donation? Are there any things to kind of help them with that decision?
I think the number one thing is therapy. Really recommend that to everyone. It was so important for me just to be able to process all of the emotions that I had, all the questions. There's not going to be any concrete answers found in therapy typically, but just to help me process all of those things. And I think was huge in helping me get to a point where I felt like I was ready to be a parent, even through an atypical or maybe even a little bit more difficult route. I think, getting checked for those, the male partners, getting checked is hugely important. And I think staying in open communication with your partner, if you have one, is just such a big thing. I think about a lot of the feelings that I had that I really didn't want to share, really didn't want to open up a lot of the times. And I'm a pretty open and talkative person with my wife, but again, just that overwhelming sense of shame and embarrassment and emasculation, even with, the person that I'm closest to in the world. I felt like really that I was just letting her down. And so being able to kind of work through that was very big. And I think another part of that is just taking our time. I think, sometimes and especially historically, jumping to, sperm donation has been kind of a secretive Band-Aid for a lot of people that have experienced similar issues as us. And it's not that. It's an alternate path to parenthood. And in my experience, in my opinion, a very valid and good one for, especially for my family. But it's not that infertility Band-Aid. It is a big decision. And so not rushing into that is big. And I know we probably took too much time and probably quite a bit more time to process that than most people would. We're just slow decision makers, like I said, but I do think that it was really good for us just to feel comfortable and ready to move on in that direction.
For sure. And any advice around support? I know that you've talked a lot about just how difficult these decisions are. And I know sometimes we try to lean on our partners, and we definitely want to do that. But what about outside support? Was there any, men's groups that you were a part of or anything like that you could recommend?
At the time that we were going through it, I could not find anything. And really, that's what kind of sparked me creating this Instagram account that I still run now, because I just couldn't find any support at all. And so that really was, like I said, what sparked me starting that account was to be that for other people, but then also to find it for myself. And along the way, I've had some really good experiences with other groups and been able to be a part of a few different groups. I know that Resolve does some groups, and they will highlight specifically male groups. And they do a lot of theirs are available virtually as well, so people can kind of join from everywhere. I've been a part of some through Fertility Rally before, where they've done men-specific groups, and I've been able to host some of those. And I'm still a part of helping with a community out of the UK called Paths to Parent Hub that Becky Kearns runs, and she is a mom through egg donation. And so her entire platform is geared towards parents or prospective parents through donation of all kinds. And so I do, still like to be involved with them. I think they put out some great support groups and content and webinars and things around donor specific, issues or questions. And then now something else that's out there that just really was harder to find, 7 or 8 years ago is the voices of donor conceived people. And so there's a lot of great communities and networks particularly on Instagram, but even on, Facebook or websites and things. There's the Donor Conceived Council and the Donor Conceived Community. Those are two great ones that work really hard to, provide support to donor conceived people, to recipient parents, but then also work really hard on, correcting some legislation to try to prevent, fertility fraud or, just some less than ideal practices through the donation and things like that. And so those are the best resources that I know of and that I like to utilize.
Gotcha. Sounds like there's quite a few now. And I completely agree. When my fertility journey started 12 years ago, there was no Instagrams, there was no resources available. So if anything else that the social media has provided us, it's things like this, wonderful communities. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if somebody's listening to this show and they're thinking about, this might be their best path to parenthood, they want to start the process of sperm donation. Can you kind of give us the cliff notes? Where do we start? Is there some things that we should do first when starting this process?
Obviously, starting with your doctor, best place to go to see. A lot of men in particular, I think, like to feel like they have left no stone unturned before moving in this direction. And so talking with your doctor and maybe even getting a second opinion on what that might look like. If you're a good candidate for a TESE procedure or even just sperm mapping or something to try to see, if that is in the cards for you. Beyond that, I think, making sure that is the right decision for you and your spouse. And then I think really, again, I just kind of always circle back to, but seeking counseling or therapy of some kind, just to make sure that you have fully processed that decision and can kind of turn your mind frame from like, what is going to fix this pain for me to, okay, I want to create this human life. What is going to be best for them? What do I need to do to get myself in the right, mind frame to get to that point? Those are the things that I always recommend. And then now, especially now that their voices are more readily available and out there, is seeking out, the voices of donor conceived people and kind of talking through or thinking through, the impact of what some of your decisions might be. And it can be hard. It can be pretty triggering. And, even now I am a parent and, it's still difficult for me sometimes to read through, some of those things, but I think it's really important and a great place to start and to kind of try to gather information so that you can make the best decisions possible for the kid that you're hoping to create.
Amazing. I love that. Well, I could talk to you all day. You've been such a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with our audience, but we do have to start to wrap up. So before we do that, I would love to play a little game so people could get to know you personally. Are you open to that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So the way that it works, I'm just going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Favorite food?
I love a good onion burger.
Oh, least favorite food?
Eggs.
You could have dinner with one person, living or dead. Who would that be?
My dad.
One thing that you're scared of?
Very small spaces.
Favorite TV show, if you watch TV, or movie?
I could watch on repeat Schitt's Creek.
I love it. And favorite quote?
Shortly after I lost my dad, I had a mentor tell me that I could not use the death of my dad as a reason to stop myself from becoming who he knew I could be. And I think the idea of kind of balancing the grief in life and being able to acknowledge that, but also carry on is just something that's stuck with me ever since then.
I love that. Amazing. Well, thank you for playing this game. We've loved getting to know you. So again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And tell everybody where they can find you. Where can they learn more about your work, and where are you located?
Yeah, like I said, I am mainly on Instagram, where I run an account called Pursuing Fatherhood. And, kind of shared all of our infertility story along the way through there. And then now share a lot about not only infertility, but I've kind of transitioned to life raising a donor-conceived child and just kind of how we became parents.
Amazing. I love that. Well, again, thank you for being here. Any words of advice? What would you like to say to our audience before we close out?
I think just take a deep breath. Don't rush. Both partners need to get checked out. And just kind of lean on each other through it all, and you'll find the best path forward for you guys.
I love it. It's amazing. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And thank you for listening to the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L Podcast. Until next time, bye for now.
Hey, hang on a second. Before you go, I've got some fantastic free resources waiting for you over at our website. You can find that at www.hormonepuzzlesociety.com. You'll find everything from a fertility meal plan, a cycle optimizing quick start guide, even a pregnancy meal plan. Plus, there's masterclasses and blog posts from myself and leading experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition, all designed to support you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of unexplained infertility, but there just wasn't. That's why I put all of these resources together for you. So make sure you go and check these out and make the most of the support that I've arranged for you. And here's a little secret. These are the same strategies and foods that helped me conceive not once, but twice, even after my doctor said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. Make sure that you take advantage of that. And I can't wait for you to be our next success story. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember to visit our website at www.hormonepuzzlesociety.com for the show notes of today's episode. And if you've enjoyed our time together, please subscribe and leave us a review. I so appreciate you, and thank you for being a valued listener. See you on the next episode of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L Podcast. Take care and lots of love.